Welcome to a celebration of reading, faith, family, and friends. A special program brought to you by the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. Made possible through the generosity of KPRC2, Phillips 66, and our many loyal supporters. With special remarks by President and Mrs. George W. Bush, and featuring best-selling authors Nelson DeMille, Tess Gerritsen, Tom Papa, Reverend Dr. Russell J. Levenson Jr., and Isabel Wilkerson. Now, please welcome the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush, and former First Lady, Laura Bush.
Welcome to a celebration of reading. As a former teacher and librarian, I'm happy to kick off this special television event focused on literacy.
Mother was passionate about literacy, and she dedicated much of her life to programs that help children and adults learn. As she once said, if you can help a person read, then their opportunities in life will be endless.
There's no more rewarding way for parents and caregivers to spend their time, and no more valuable gift we can give our children than to devote time every day to read as a family. I'm grateful that the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation is improving the lives of Houstonians by supporting family literacy efforts.
Laura and I invite you to join us in giving the gift of reading. By supporting the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, you are helping children and adults reach their potential in school and in life. Thank you for your generosity. Enjoy the show, and may God bless you.
A powerful message from President George W. Bush and First Lady Laura Bush. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Derek Shore.
And I'm Lisa Hernandez. We are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation here at the Boys and Girls Club of Spring Branch, where the foundation has just installed a brand new children's library.
This is one of the many programs supported by the organization started by First Lady Barbara Bush to help tackle a problem in our community that often goes unnoticed: illiteracy. It
is a quiet problem as adults and children often struggle in silence, but it is pervasive. Nearly 1 in 3 adults in Harris County is considered functionally illiterate.
And as you heard President George W. Bush just say, Barbara Bush believed, quote, if you help a person to read, their opportunities in life will be endless. And giving that opportunity to everyone is exactly why she started her literacy foundation.
And that foundation is the driving force behind dozens of programs and organizations aimed at carrying out Barbara's mission to ensure every Houstonian has the opportunity to learn to read.
Tonight, we will be taking a look at why literacy was so important to her. We'll talk with some of the people closest to her throughout her life, including her son, Neil Bush, about why she chose this to be her legacy.
We'll hear from nationally renowned and best-selling authors who come from across the U.S. every year to support the mission to end illiteracy in Houston.
We'll also introduce you to the programs and people bringing life-changing resources to children and adults around the Houston area. And we'll chat with Mayor Turner about literacy in our city and how it impacts our economy and community.
And perhaps most importantly, we will explain how we can all get plugged in and help. Throughout the show, you'll see a QR code in the corner of your screen. It has the links you need to get involved through gifts of your time or money to help support all that is being done to promote literacy in our area.
All right. Well, during her lifetime, Barbara Bush championed many charitable causes, from cancer research to hunger, but family literacy truly became a lifelong passion for Mrs. Bush.
Certainly did. Her mission to help others learn to read did not begin in the political spotlight, but in her role as mom. Her son, Neil Bush, says it was his mother's heart that drove her to help her own children and others.
And Neil, now the chairman of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, says this mission started in part after his mom made a visit to his elementary school classroom.
At the center of my mother's life was reading. She read a lot. She read to us a lot. I had the experience of being in second grade, third grade, and she came to the reading circle day at school. So the book was passed from kid to kid, and when it got to me, I couldn't read the words, so the kid to my left helped, the kid to the right helped, and people, all the teacher help, everybody kind of helped me get through my section of the reading. And she realized at that moment that I had a problem reading. Dyslexia wasn't well known at the time, but she was a great mom that took me to remedial activities during weekends and during special times and that kind of thing. So yeah, she became aware of the importance of literacy, I think, even though she denied it. She picked literacy as a cause for other reasons, in part because of my struggle with reading.
Do you think that, Neil, because of your own struggles as a child reading, do you think that helps you better understand the crisis of illiteracy, specifically here in Houston?
It definitely helps me understand, that if you can't read, that you struggle. I struggled in school. I hated school. School was a pain and difficult and challenging and made me miserable. Can you imagine not being able to read, at a third grade level, in high school, and being graduated and jumping into an adult life without the reading skills required to fill out an job application form, or to help your kids with their homework? So a lot of people are struggling, and it is a crisis. And it's not just a crisis in Houston, but we've identified the crisis in Houston at every age group, from preschool through third grade, through high school, through adult literacy. There's a problem and a challenge that many amazing organizations are tackling right now, and I'm proud that the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation has put a bright spotlight on these issues and is helping to kind of lift up those organizations that are doing great work. And we're doing wonderful things at the foundation in giving books to kids that have never had home libraries.
Those programs and the efforts of the foundation, what do you think your mom would make of all of this today?
Oh my gosh, she'd be so proud. Mom was very active. Whenever we would ask her to do something, to go to a school to read, or to open a section of a library, the George and Barbara Bush reading section for little kids in a library, she'd show up. She did literacy things with J.J. Watt and Dwight Howard. I love to pick the image of little tiny diminutive Barbara Bush and these two giant athletes, but she would do anything we asked her to do, and she loved it. She just loved being around the cause and people helping with the cause, the volunteers that were participating in the cause, and to see the light shining on kids, that were being read to by her. She just loved that kind of activity. She ate it up, and she was a real warrior and trooper for us.
Why do you think it was literacy your mom chose?
I think when she became the second lady, the vice president's wife, when Dad was elected with Ronald Reagan, I think she needed to pick a cause, and so she did a lot of study of, issues that were facing the world, and she decided that literacy affects almost all issues. It affects crime and health and issues related to stability in society and all those kinds of things that are huge issues that we see troubling us today.
Obviously, everyone knows who your family is. Was there a point when you realized, oh wow, we can actually use our tools and our talents for good? Because everything I know about your parents, I did not know them personally, unfortunately, but everything I know about your parents and your family is that they truly believed in living lives of service.
Yeah. First of all, my parents set a great example of service to others for us as kids and for their friends. They modeled it in practice. But then as Dad became more famous and had a platform that he could lever for good, he chose to highlight service and said that any definition of a successful life must include service to others. He's formed Points of Light, the organization that promotes volunteerism and giving in many different ways, over 30 years ago, with that mission in mind, to try to help people find the light in themselves to help others. Now, my mom's reflection of that, call to service was focused on literacy, and there's just so much that individuals can do to intervene in the lives of others to help them with achieving a fuller level of literacy. Again, she was very wise in choosing literacy and in knowing that others can join the cause, to fight the low levels of literacy in communities all over America, and especially here in her backyard. She was extremely proud of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and the work being done in lifting everyone through literacy.
It's an incredible story, and you heard Neil Bush reference the problem of literacy in Houston as a crisis. Nearly 1/3 of adults in Harris County lack the reading skills to cope with most jobs or even navigate everyday situations.
1/3 of adults. It's an incredible number. And with access to public schools, libraries, and programs, finding a solution might seem easy, but you can imagine it is much more complicated than that.
It is. I met up with Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner and Julie Baker Fink, President and CEO of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, to learn more about the problem, the progress, and the future of literacy here in Houston. Where do we stand in Houston currently in regard to adult literacy rates and the implication those rates have on the city of Houston?
You know, I wish I could say that we are great, that everybody in the city of Houston is functionally literate. If you round it out, about 1/3 of people within our city are not reading at the level or comprehending at the level that we would like, which is unfortunate. And because of that, is holding many, I won't just say individuals, but families, holding them back.
You mentioned the phrase functionally illiterate. Describe that for us. What does that mean?
Yeah, and I don't like using the term illiterate. People may be able to add or read, but when it comes to the documents themselves, they may be able to read the headline, but instead of understanding additional documents that they need to sign or contracts that they need to read through, they may not be at that level.
A few years back, you established the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy. Why did you invest in this office? Why is that so important to you?
Well, let me just speak from a personal point of view, because oftentimes it seems like you're talking about other people. But I come out of a family where neither one of my parents graduated from high school. Dad died early, but it was my mom who was rearing 9 kids by herself. And I'll never forget when I needed someone to sign my loan papers to go to law school. You know, I brought the loan papers home and I gave them to my mom. And my mom said, you know, explain what you're giving me. Now, could she read it right? Yes. But was she at the level of understanding these loan documents where I was asking her to sign her name to guarantee this loan for her son? No. And I would tell you, I'm very much inspired by Barbara Bush. I have to acknowledge that. And the foundation and her legacy is strong because she got it, she understood it, and she put her name and self behind it. And because of that legacy and that foundation, other people in the city, businesses in this city, have responded. And I give a great deal of credit to the Houston Public Library, working with the Barbara Bush Foundation.
Julie, your turn. The Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation jumped in early to help with the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy, create that citywide adult literacy blueprint. Why did you want to help fund that, and what are the goals there?
We wanted to be on the forefront. Barbara Bush, firmly believed that when you help a person to read, then their opportunities in life will be endless. And for more than 3 decades, she advocated for adult and family literacy. And it just made sense. It was the right thing to do, and I think she would be very proud of the work that the mayor has been leading and his team at the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy.
Let's talk about the progress that the Adult Literacy Blueprint has made here. Tell me about that.
And it has made tremendous progress. Look, when the Barbara Bush Foundation laid out the blueprint, working with the city and specifically the library, it set the blueprint for where we needed to be. And I mean, you can tackle something, but if you don't have those benchmarks, it's hard to measure and hard to get there. So 2036,
yes.
That's the goal, where we reach the point where everybody is up to that level, that functional level where they need to be. And we are moving forward. I'm proud to say that working with Julie and the Barbara Bush Foundation, we are the only city with the Mayor's Office of Adult Literacy in the country.
In the country?
In the country.
And if I may, the only one with a strategic plan focused on adult literacy, helping people to gain the employability skills, the basic functional literacy skills that we talked about, digital literacy skills. So we're really truly paving the way. We're an innovative city. We're going to keep on doing that, right, Mayor Turner? And
again, we are, the legacy of Barbara Bush continues. By 2036, hopefully the city of Houston will set the benchmark, so to speak, where everyone, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you live, your background, your language, what have you, that you will be at that level where you can read a document and understand it.
Fantastic. Julie, describe the relationship between adult and childhood literacy rates in Houston.
A mother's education level is highly related to a child's education level. And when we think about brain development, there's been so much research in the last couple of decades around brain development and how children learn. You know, it really is paramount that parents know how to read and to support their child's early literacy development, because a child's brain is 90% developed by age 5 when compulsory education begins. So it's very, very important as a city that we invest in early childhood education, but that we also invest in families and parents.
The foundation celebrating 10 years this year.
Yes.
Absolutely, applause. What are you most proud of and what's ahead?
I think one of the most important things that we've done is partner with the mayor's office and Mayor Turner to really elevate literacy as a priority in our city. You know, some of it is that you can't really tackle a problem if you don't really know what the problem is. And we've certainly outlined and made a compelling case for why literacy is and should be a key priority of our city, but we're also taking steps through the blueprint to make sure that we're implementing evidence-based, research-based programs for children and adults to have the skills that they need to be successful through the public library systems, through our family place libraries. We'll be distributing our 1,000th book at the end of this year through our My Home Library program, and we can't expect kids to be confident and competent readers if they don't have books in their home.
Mayor, finally for you, what's your hope for the future when it comes to Houston's literacy landscape?
You help one person to reach that level of comprehension. You help one person, you help one family. You help one person, one family, you're lifting up that community. And if you lift up that community, you're lifting up that city. And by benefiting one, you benefit so many others.
To help improve literacy in our city, the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation partners with many organizations and hundreds of volunteers to host programs for all ages.
Support for our youngest Houstonians comes through initiatives like My Home Library and the Curiosity Cruiser, which engages kids at home and after school. We'll have more on those programs coming up.
They are very cool programs. There's also a Camp Adventure. It's a summer program that delivers interactive science, technology, engineering, arts, math, reading experiences to hundreds of disadvantaged children every single year at no cost to their family.
And which ones are the ones that they feed off of?
Since 2016, the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, in collaboration with Children's Museum Houston, has sponsored Camp Adventure. It's an interactive learning experience for elementary school students. Our focus is that we always have a core STEM activity, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics is the focus, and then we surround that, bookend it with a through line of literacy throughout each day's experience.
My most favorite thing about Camp Adventure is the books. When we have literacy time, it's just so cool.
Camp Adventure is very exciting and engaging for our scholars, especially this week because they are doing dissections.
Oh my goodness, look at that!
They're able to get the learning aspect of dissection early in 4th and 5th grade, when most students are getting that in the high school, middle school level.
I never saw a bone like in real life, and it's just a new thing that I discovered. It's teaching me how to dissect different types of animals and different types of things.
These STEM activities provide scholars with the opportunity to think about careers in the STEM fields, such as being a doctor, biologist, engineer. any career in STEM, really, that they wouldn't normally have access to otherwise.
It makes me think about being a doctor when I grow up. Or a scientist.
The Children's Museum Houston's been working with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation for many, many years. They have supported a lot of our work, and that was really what gave us the impetus to create kind of a merger in the way that we've brought Camp Adventure to be what it is today.
You can help local kids just like these. It is easy. Just a $5 donation provides a new book to an underserved child in Houston.
Just $5 goes a long way. Another way you can help kids in your community is to get involved with your local Boys and Girls Club.
That is right. We are at the club here in Spring Branch, where they have partnered with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation to expand the tremendous opportunities here at the center.
And this is such a beautiful space. Zanae Campbell is the Vice President of Program Services and Club Operations for Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Houston. She is joining us now. Hi, Zanae. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Houston, how many young people are you reaching every single year?
Well, Derek, we serve over 50,000 young people in the Greater Houston region annually. So it is a lot of young people, and we desire to serve more kids.
And Zanae, how does this new library support your programming? It's incredible what you have here.
No, we are so excited about it. I'm so happy that y'all are able to see this. This library is going to serve over 2,000 young people in the Spring Branch community, and hopefully more.
Talk about some of the programs, Zanae, that young people can be part of here at the club. I know during the summer months, your numbers go up because then you have these children all day long.
Yes.
These are young people who have access to opportunities here that perhaps they might not otherwise have access to.
Yeah, you know, I always like to say, I wish I had the opportunity to have Boys and Girls Club when I was coming up. There are so many opportunities and unique experiences. Something like this, being able to partner with a great organization like Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, the Harris County Public Library, getting access to books, a beautiful space. But we also have technology labs, a wonderful full-size gym. We have places to do any of the academic work, and then just to have a lot of fun. We have a STEM center in the location. You know, it's an amazing space for kids. We serve kids from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. So there's something for everyone.
It really is something, Zanae. For folks watching tonight, how can they get involved with this effort here at the Boys and Girls Club?
Well, we need all the help we can get. As we said, we have young people all day, so we appreciate anyone's help. But of course, there's some major ways to be able to support the organization. Obviously, with your time. We love volunteers coming in and support. If you're a caring adult, please come in and give some time with our young people. You can find us on our website at bgcgh.org and just sign up to volunteer. And you can, at any one of our 23 locations, come out and help a young person, help them with reading, help them have some time to explore and have the love of reading. We would appreciate that.
Before we let you go, we have got to talk about this beautiful space where we are now. We are surrounded by books, by murals. It's colorful, it's interesting, and obviously the theme of the program today is literacy. What do you think this library will be able to offer for the young people who walk through these doors every single day?
Well, it is so important, as you know, from the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, and of course the focus of all of our schools in the region. Really, you know, working with our young people to develop that love for reading and then also those skills for reading. You know, it is the foundation for everything. So we are excited about this space because not only were our young people able to explore, able to see text, you know, pictures that look like them. I mean, it's a really exciting time for our kids, exciting time for our staff to work with our kids and our volunteers. So they will be able to experience reading time, the reading corners, just those things that we all kind of remember, you know, being back in school when the focus was really heavy on literacy and reading.
This has to be so fulfilling for you.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it is.
Part of all this.
It is.
Incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
Zanae Campbell, Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Houston, thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you guys so much.
And
Please
thank
come
you.
out.
Yes.
We will. It is a
Volunteer.
beautiful space. Well, the Foundation's Ladies for Literacy Guild just completed this very children's library here at the Spring Branch Boys and Girls Club.
It's so cool in here. It is themed to look like a Curiosity Cruiser. On its face, it looks like a library on wheels, which it is, but it's also a lot more.
Yeah, it brings books, of course, activities, family programs, as Zanae just mentioned, to kids around the city who might not otherwise have those opportunities. opportunities. And we got to see it firsthand when the cruiser made a stop at Finnegan Park.
I am in front of our beloved Curiosity Cruiser, one of 4 in a fleet of Curiosity Cruisers that are state-of-the-art super libraries on wheels.
Oh, this one is like that. That's pretty cool.
The Curiosity Cruisers are engaged in weekly exciting and creative programming, engaging children in a lifelong love of reading and helping them build their own home libraries.
Look, I got Minecraft. Look, I got Blue Mario.
Over 61% of children without access to books in the home are not reading at grade level. And we developed the Curiosity Cruisers as a project of Our Ladies Guild to address the really deep disparities that exist in many of Houston's most at-risk communities. Through our wonderful partners at Harris County Public Library, more than 75,000 free books have been given away through our Curiosity Cruiser initiatives. And in addition, more than 65,000 children have been impacted, creating a lifelong love of learning.
Like the Curiosity Cruiser program and the library here at the Boys and Girls Club, the foundation is able to extend its impact by partnering with organizations throughout Houston. One of its biggest partnerships is with Harris County Public Libraries.
They have teamed up to create special family places inside our local libraries. The goal is to help parents better prepare their children for kindergarten.
And here with more about the impact of this program and how it can benefit your family is Edward Melton, Library Director of the Harris County Public Library. Welcome to the program, sir. It's great to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There are 26 libraries in the Harris County system. Lisa just mentioned these family places. There are 19 family places. I know there are more on the way. Describe to our viewers what they are.
So the goal is to have family place libraries in all 26 branches. Right now we have 19 that are standing. And what family place libraries are, they're designated areas within all of our libraries that are specifically for toddlers and for their families and caregivers. With those spaces, we have toys, we have manipulatives, we have all type of things that children can use to explore, to learn, to socialize. And also on the other part of that, we want to help the parents to understand how they can be more supportive of their children in that learning process. And so we have resources for the parents, and we also conduct workshops for the parents to attend so that they can understand the development of that child and how they can improve the opportunities for learning for their children.
This obviously can be life-changing for the entire family, these all-inclusive spaces. What has the reaction been like from people who've been able to benefit?
It's been great because a lot of times parents are trying to figure it out. They're first-time parents, they don't understand, you know, what they should be doing, but everyone wants the best outcomes for their children. And so with these spaces, it allows us to bring in professionals to have those conversations, to have those discussions about things like health, nutrition, all those different things. And then also our staff through this program have been specially trained in child development so that they understand how they can even continue to support those families as they come in and seek resources in terms of raising their children.
Edward, getting a child kindergarten ready is a priority of this program. Why is that so important?
Well, we know that if a child is kindergarten ready, they're going to be probably more successful in their education long term. So we're looking at the end goal in terms of not only being kindergarten ready, but then also being able to read by level by third grade. And so those are some important key indicators that's going to tell whether a child is going to be successfully educational in the future.
And you're also working to make sure that these children grow into young adults who, once it's time for them to graduate, they have the literacy skills rather, to be successful in life.
Yes, definitely. And so with that, you know, as we work with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, a continuation of that is we start with the early childhood education with the family place libraries, but then we transition into the Curiosity Cruiser. And so with the Curiosity Cruiser, that helps us with our level reading program. So kids now, they not only come to the cruiser is like a mobile outreach vehicle that we have that goes across the county, underserved populations, in order to provide library literacy services and also STEM activities. And so these children come to this vehicle, which is kind of like a popsicle truck experience that they have, but they come in, they're able to get books, and not only do they don't check out the books, they actually get a chance to have the books in order to create their own personal home libraries. And so with creating those own home personal libraries, it increases the access of them having interesting reading materials that they are going to read, to build those habits of reading.
Edward Melton with the Harris County Public Library System. We are out of time. Thank you so much for stopping by. Can you imagine being a young person and the Curiosity Cruiser comes into your neighborhood and then gives you a stack of books?
Well, they're chasing it like the ice cream man, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's incredible. Chasing after the books. We appreciate all you do.
Thanks for your work.
Thank you so much. Well, the Foundation's work with the University of Houston has created a really powerful partnership with our local schools.
Yeah, the Cougar Tutor Program is an outreach program credited with improving morale, student engagement, and school accountability ratings.
Here is a look at how the program is supporting kids in the 3rd Ward.
Cougar Tutor is a very special program at the University of Houston. We created it in 2017 as part of our 3rd Ward initiative, simply because too many school children across 3rd Ward were reading below grade level. And the elementary schools just did not have the resources to address the great need of their students on their own. The Cougar Tutor Program hires, trains, and places UHS students in elementary schools to support literacy instruction. The children of 3rd Ward build a trusting relationship with a caring adult and develop stronger literacy skills.
Trying to sign her name, right? I get the opportunity and capacity to learn new techniques and apply them in classrooms and just incorporate fun in my lessons.
I like having tutors in the classroom because they can help me with my work.
We as teachers love the extra help in the classroom. The kids enjoy it. Sometimes the university students will sit with a small group of 3 or 4 students, and because literacy runs across math, science, social studies, we incorporate that into the other lessons.
We have 9 tutors that are currently on campus, and they have collectively worked 4,400 hours with our scholars. In 2018, we started out at Blackshear Elementary with an F in their accountability system. In 2019, it became a C. 2022, now we have an A. And with the help of tutors, coupled with the phenomenal educators that we have in the classroom, helped us go from an F rating now to an A.
My grades are hard because of tutor, because it can make me go to like 2nd grade, 5th grade, 2nd grade, 4th grade, 9th grade, yeah.
And you can help support the UH Cougar Tutor Program by scanning the QR code on your screen. A $25 donation provides a child with 1 hour of reading tutoring.
Of course, donations are vital to the health and growth of all of these programs.
And while hundreds of volunteers lighten the load, there's still a large financial cost. You can help by scanning the QR code or by visiting barbarabushhouston.org.
Or keep an eye out for tickets to next year's celebration of reading. It is the Foundation's biggest fundraiser, which happens in Houston each April. It's led by Neil and Maria Bush and their family and draws in guests and speakers from across the country. Some big names in the literary world come out to support the cause each year. This year's lineup included best-selling authors Nelson DeMille, Tess Gerritsen, Tom Papa, Isabel Wilkerson, and Houston's own Reverend Dr. Russell J. Levenson Jr. We'll hear from each of them about their own journey in the literary world and why this mission is so important to them.
Very, very nice. Well, first up on that list is a familiar face to many Houstonians, the Reverend Dr. Russell J. Levenson Jr. of St. Martin's Episcopal Church. He served as pastor, friend of the Bushes for more than a decade, and he continues to be an advocate for their character and causes.
Reverend Levenson had a front row seat to how the Bushes lived out their faith and called to service in public and behind closed doors. He recently released a book titled Witness to Dignity about his firsthand account of living alongside the couple as they sought to uplift those around them.
I sat down with Dr. Levenson to find out what motivated him to share this story and why he felt literacy was such a calling for Barbara Bush. Dr. Levenson, thank you so much for welcoming us into your beautiful home here.
Well, thank you. It's a great place to worship, great place to serve, and of course it was the Bushes' worshiping home as well.
Just thumbing through the book, there are so many stories, memories, letters, trips that you would take together. How did you begin to distill all these memories down into a book? And Why was it important for you to write this book and share these memories?
To honor them, to honor their faith, which I think was real and authentic, and served them well throughout their lives up until the end of their lives. When I began really thinking after about a year and a half after their deaths, people ought to know the story of their faith. There's not a lot written about that part of their lives, and that was the part that I came to know the best. There's lots of books about their history and their leadership and their political career, and some of that is in this book, but the vast majority is about how their faith shaped them, and by shaping them, I think shaped, frankly, his service and leadership. But at the same time, I felt like it was important that people got to know that what Barbara always said was true, that when all the crowds are gone and the dust is settled, the only thing that matters is family, friends, and faith. And I think I saw in those latter years how much they gave of themselves to their friends, to their family, to their faith. In very much the same way, when you meet the other children, Jeb, who wrote The Ford, or Neil, or 43, or Marvin, Dora, they are very much the same way. They really are comfortable around all kinds of people, very welcoming, very warm, know how to write notes. The president, I told you earlier about how many people, I said, how many people met him, many hands go out, how many people have a story, how many of you have gotten a note from him? Just about as many hands, and handwritten notes. And I would see Barbara do that when we would get to Kenny Buckport, which we would be there for 2 or 3 days. Every morning she'd pop down her mail, and she'd start going through the letters one by one, and we were usually watching television or talking, and she would start responding to each and every letter. And those are great people, those are great traits, things we could certainly use today.
Kindness, though, I think is what it all boils down to, right? Leading by example.
Yeah.
If you had to boil it down to the one thing that left the biggest imprint on you from the Bush family?
That is a great question, because I don't think I thought about it fully probably until after they died. Almost every time I left them, I would think to myself, I need to be a better Christian. Var in particular was really intent that her church did not exist solely to serve those in the pews. I think this church already had very much a heart and a commitment to serve the needy in Houston and beyond, and the underserved, and so already very engaged in that when I came. But almost every serious conversation I ever had with Bar, she would say, no, we're still active in the community, because it's really important to me that we still serve the community. And it's important, I think, to most every member of St. Martin's. But in many ways, it became an anchor for me, because we do a lot for our members here. We have almost 10,000 members now, and we do a lot in the way of programming for them. But I don't think we lose sight, and I attribute that to all of our members who are very committed. But I don't think we lose sight of the desperate need there is in the community around us. So I've been here 16 years. We've given about $40 million into the needy, the underserved. I think Barbara would quietly be whispering, she wouldn't say good job, she would say that's what you're supposed to do. that's what you do if you're a church, and if you're a follower of Christ, you do that. It's not, don't look for any accolades for that.
I think it's perfect that we are celebrating and featuring your book as part of this literacy special.
Yeah.
And of course, we know literacy is an issue that was so close to Barbara's heart. What do you make of her desire to leave that as her legacy?
I think because, frankly, it is part of each and every person's life, each and every day. If you can't read, there's so much you cannot do. And we should have nobody in the United States of America who cannot have access to the ability to learn how to read. It's so important. It is something that carries you from beginning to end. And I think that's why.
Dr. Levenson had so many incredible stories, as you can imagine. I could have spoken with him for hours. Lovely to hear these stories. Many of them stories we had never heard of the Bush family.
It is something to hear his account of everything he witnessed and was privy to, and we thank him for his time.
We do.
You may notice a theme when it comes to a passion for books. There is a personal connection.
There sure is. The role of family and friends in literacy is universal, and it holds true for our next author. Pulitzer Prize winner Isabel Wilkerson, who credits her parents with shaping her life's work.
As Lauren Kelly found out, it was their struggle with segregation that led her to tell the stories of race in America.
Well, Isabel Wilkerson is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, the author of The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration, and now Caste, the origins of our discontents. Welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Speak to the connection between Caste and your first work, The Warmth of Other Suns.
Well, The Warmth of Other Suns was the story about this great migration, which was the outpouring of 6 million African Americans from the Jim Crow South to the rest of the country. Of course, many of them had been Texans who then migrated out to California, and that's why there's this deep connection between California and Texas. And so what they were leaving was what I was describing in that book, which was essentially a world in which it was actually against the law for a black person and a white person to merely play checkers together in Birmingham. You could go to jail if you were caught merely playing checkers with a person of a different race. This was a world in which it was so extreme that in courtrooms throughout the South, there was actually a black Bible and an altogether separate white Bible to swear to tell the truth on in court. That's how seriously it was taken, that the very word of God could not be touched by hands of different races. And so that's what set me on the journey of understanding what was that, how was that established, and how do we live with the after effects of that world that was created back then.
Can you speak to your process as a researcher and a writer?
Well, the work that I do takes a lot of time. It's called narrative nonfiction. And when you first think about nonfiction, you often think of it as something that's going to be fact-based and focused on, on the history and particular things. And this is true. But narrative nonfiction means it's a story. It's telling a story of whatever the phenomenon is. So with Warmth of the Suns, it was about these 3 people who were leaving the South and setting out on a journey to follow their dreams, also to escape a world that had been forbidding for them. And then with Caste, it's a way of understanding how our country came to be and how some of the divisions that we're seeing could be better understood in the ways of, using history to better understand it. And so the goal is to do as much research as possible and then to convert it into something that hopefully you will not be able to put down. That's what narrative nonfiction is.
Wow. All I can say is wow. Tons of research. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, describe the role your parents played in your love of reading and desire to become a writer. I know it's got to be huge.
Oh, it is huge. In fact, my parents were part of this great migration that I've described, that I spent so much of my life's work on. And they had left different parts of the South and then migrated to Washington, D.C., which is where I was born. And so they had grown up in a world where it was actually, they couldn't go to the libraries. They were forbidden to go into the libraries when they were growing up. And so when they had me, and one of the first things that they did was to teach me to read at a very early age and then to take me to the library, because they had the chance to share with me or give me an opportunity that they hadn't had themselves, which is merely to go into a library and take out books. And if you're going to become a writer, you kind of need a book now and then. My father had been a Tuskegee Airman. And after the war, they were not permitted. They were prohibited from being able to work as pilots. I mean, here were some of the greatest pilots our country ever produced, and they were prohibited from working as a result of Jim Crow. And so what he had to do, and a lot of them had to do, was go back to school, and then he went back to get another degree. Some of them became dentists, some of them became other things. And he went back and he became a civil engineer, which means that he was literally the builder of bridges. And so I am the daughter of a builder of bridges, and that's what I seek to do in all of my work.
So wonderful. Wonderful stories, wonderful research. Isabel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Isabel says her parents' commitment to literacy came from being denied access to libraries and education. They made sure Isabel would never have to face that same hardship.
Really demonstrates a very critical piece of the literacy cycle. When parents can read and have a passion for it, they teach their children to read, which then breaks the generational cycle of low literacy.
And the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation is tackling this through a partnership with the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy and 5 community-based organizations, offering a program called Success Through Adult Reading.
That program gives adults access to courses needed to learn English, earn a GED, and become competent in reading and writing. In turn, then they can create a better future for themselves and their families. Well, passing the love of reading and writing from generation to generation is key to ending illiteracy.
Our next author has taken that idea to heart. After writing nearly 24 books, he has taken on a new writing partner, his son.
Brittany Jeffers sat down with Nelson DeMille to chat about his latest book and the path that led him to team up with his son Alex.
Well, I am here with Nelson DeMille. He's the author of 7 New York Times bestseller. His latest book out, you can see right here, The Maze. Sir, what can you tell us about this book?
The Maze is actually based on a true crime. It's called the Gilgo Beach Murders. They were local on Long Island where I live. There were 10 prostitutes who were found murdered and dumped on the beach, which was Gilgo Beach. Kind of made national news too because it was such a bizarre case. There were a couple of docudramas made about it and some books written on it. And the case was 10 years old when I decided I want to novelize this because I want to try to pull all these things together, all these theories and all these, people accused. It became a people were looking at other people like who did this, and the police chief of the county was he was suspected of having something to do with it. So it just seemed like a natural subject for a novelist, and I researched it. I talked to a lot of cops, and the final result was The Maze.
The Maze.
Right.
Sounds fascinating. Absolutely. Well, as we know, you are very talented. You've got a lot of books, a lot for people to enjoy. You are set to release a second book. Now, this one, as we mentioned, it's co-authored by your son, Alex. We want to know what's it like and what was that process like getting to write alongside with your son?
It was interesting. My son is 42, and he's a screenwriter. And, he's an accomplished screenwriter. He won one of his films won first place at Comic-Con. So he knows what he's doing in terms of screenplay. He never did a novel before, but I was looking for a co-author because the publisher wanted me to do a co-authored book. And I said, this is either a very good idea or one of the worst ideas I've ever had. And it worked. It worked for the first book, which was called The Deserter. And now we have a book coming out in October called Bloodlines. So it's our second co-authored book, and we're still talking to each other.
Well, that's good. It sounds like a great collaboration,
Right.
and good to hear you're still on good terms. So it will definitely be an interesting book. As someone so accomplished as you, to put out so many books, what or who, I guess, really influenced you or inspired you, to become a writer?
I was born at a time when there wasn't much TV and there was no internet, so we read. It was a cheap form of entertainment, and libraries were free. And the whole generation read. I mean, we really did read. This is back in the dark ages of the 1950s. And I read, the classics. I read, and I read a lot of the post-war books like Norman Mailer and James Jones. And my father was a great reader, and he would give me books to read. So I just became caught up in that world. I just loved the world of, of writing, and I, in the back of my mind, I said, maybe someday I'll become a writer. And I think maybe the one that tipped me the most was the James Bond series, Ian Fleming. By that time I was in college, and it sounded like a, glamorous life of, it's not so glamorous, by the way, but it sounded glamorous. So I think it was the James Bond novels and Ian Fleming, the writer, who really said to me when I was in college at that point, I want to become a novelist.
And here you are.
Here I am.
And here you are. Well, we so appreciate you coming in here, speaking with us today. Nelson DeMille, The Maze, as well as several other novels. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Brittany.
Our next two authors share a special connection. They started out in careers far from the literacy field, but their passion for storytelling eventually led them to writing.
Author Tess Gerritsen, or should we say Dr. Gerritsen, was first a physician. She went from being a doctor in Honolulu to a writer in Maine.
And she's now the author of the Rizzoli and Isles series, which inspired the hit television show. She spoke with Zach Lajway about why she made the switch from medicine to books.
I'm here with Tess Gerritsen, author of Rizzoli and Isles, Listen to Me 13. Thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with us.
I'm so happy to be in Houston.
Where did the idea come from?
Well, it's the 13th in my series starring Detective Jane Rizzoli and homicide detective Maura Isles. And it's a whole universe of characters. And I wanted to do a story that had to do with an older generation, with Jane's mother. So she's really the focus of the story.
What experience and knowledge have you drawn upon as a physician to build the stories and characters within your books?
Well, I mean, having been a doctor helps, obviously, with the medical issues and with Maura Isles, who's a medical examiner. But really, I think everything we do, every experience we have, every occupation anybody may have, works its way into a story somehow. And I just happen to have medicine as my background.
I know both characters, both main characters, are females, strong, independent women.
Well, you know, I worked in a hospital with a lot of strong, independent women. I mean, if you want to go up against an impenetrable force, just talk to an emergency room nurse.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So this is my experience as a working woman. I worked with a lot of women who knew what they were doing, who were united in their goal, which is simply to cure a patient. And they weren't rivals, as a lot of fiction would have women be. They were true colleagues. So that's what I was trying to illustrate: is what is it like to be a working woman these days?
Was it tough? Was it challenging tapping into those experiences to bring these characters to life?
Not really. You know, characters come to life because of, well, for me anyway, it's because I hear their voices.
Yeah. Oh,
and
wow.
a brand new character for me isn't something that I write a biographical sketch for, or, you know, really go into detail about what they eat for breakfast. I just sit at my desk, and it sounds weird, but I wait for them to start talking to me. And you can tell a lot by a person's voice.
How long does that typically take? What's the coming to fruition, if you will, in that process?
Well, it can take months, or it can happen overnight. And sometimes I'll wake up and somebody will be talking to me. And I'll think, okay, tell me the rest of your story.
Right.
It's a magical process. I don't know how to explain where it comes from. Maybe I feel like sometimes as if I'm channeling other personalities. And when you hear that voice, you know whether they're male or female, you know their age, you know their educational background, and they tell you their story.
They tell you their story.
Right.
That's pretty powerful. Throughout this journey, do characters ever stop by that you did not anticipate?
All the time.
All the time.
You know, it's like the neighbor who knocks on your door, and I didn't really want to talk to you.
Just go away.
Go away, right. Right, especially, you know, I think the voice that really has to come to you mostly is the antagonist, who is the villain. Because villains are harder to really to understand. Those of us who would not think of killing somebody, we have to come up with somebody who really would, and you have to understand their motivations.
Do you believe you were a novelist, a writer, an author before you were a physician?
I was 7 years old when I told my dad, I want to write novels. And he said, oh, that's nice, but it's no way to make a living. So, you know, and as a Chinese American family, being practical is so important. So he said, go into medicine, at least you'll have a job. And part of the reason I went into medical school was to make my father happy.
Yeah. Well, what's now beautiful is you're making yourself happy, and you're making all of us happy through your journeys and your stories.
Yes, that's very true. And, you know, I have so many stories of Asian Americans who have written to me and said, lucky you followed your passion. I mean, now I'm a computer engineer. My father told me to do it, and I hate my job, and I always wanted to be a fashion designer. So I hear those stories, and I think I'm really very fortunate that I could find success in what I wanted to do.
People are always watching, they're always listening, and you are constantly inspiring. Tess, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you.
Our next author turned to writing after decades as one of the nation's top comedians.
Tom Papa is known for bringing the laughs with his stand-up routine, but more recently realized he could bring that same joy to a wider audience through books. Brittany Jeffers chatted with him about his latest novel, which takes a comical look at how we are more alike than we realize.
So we are here with Tom Papa. He has a brand new book out. We're all in this together, so make room. Set to release in June, so coming up. So we would just like to know the big inspiration behind this book.
The big inspiration for this book, there's a real feeling out there that we're not all in this together. There's a lot of everybody feeling that they're combative and against people, and my sides and your sides, and it's like, no. You know, I tour a lot as a comedian, and I meet everyday people all the time.
Right.
And that's not the way people are living. That's not what we're really feeling. We are literally all in this together, and we can learn from each other.
You know, at what point in comedy did you realize that, you know, this is what you wanted to do with your life?
To become a comedian? It really was when I was a child, when I was in 7th grade. And I was always very funny. I was always that's how I made friends. That's how I got the older kids to hang out with me and got the girls to talk to me. And in 7th grade, I realized I saw Steve Martin and George Carlin had albums. And that was the first time I realized, oh, you can be an adult and be funny. There's a job for this. And from that point on, I thought that's where I'm going.
So what is it, you know, with this incredible job that you have, to then try to transition and to add, you know, to say, I want to be a writer. I want to add this to my resume.
Yeah, it was kind of natural. I mean, I'm writing all the time, you know, and I've been a stand-up comedian now for over 25 years, and I've always been writing and writing, and I wanted to say more. So I wrote my first book, and it was called Your Dad Stole My Rake and Other Family Dilemmas. And it was just so much fun. I could take the material and go even deeper and continue the conversation with the audience. And I loved it. You know, I know a lot of comedians that write books and then they never write them again. They're like, that's it. It was the horrible experience. But I really loved it. I loved being in my office. I loved writing. I loved the process of it. And so I just kept going. And now I kind of consider myself as much a writer as a comedian.
We know you obviously travel extensively, so you've got a lot going on between your comedy tour, your streaming, you got a podcast, radio. There's a lot going on here with family as well. How do you balance all of this?
I just keep going. I just keep going. Yeah, exactly. My wife always says that my being on the road a lot kind of helped our marriage, you know, because you get to leave and then you get to come back, you know, and it's a business. Like when running your family is, it's difficult. I mean, you start off and it's all romance and fun, and then, you know, you have kids and dogs and dead pets and living relatives, and you ultimately become business partners.
Well, and that resonates with so many people.
Yeah, right, exactly. I know, we're all the same. That's really, I mean, that's what this book is really about. We're not really different. I guarantee we were just meeting, and I know a lot about you.
Right.
I know what you're doing when you're waking up in the morning. I know that you're trying to deal with your in-laws and all of that stuff, and we're all really the same. I mean, it's nice to think that we're special, and we are in some regard. But people have been doing this stuff for a long, long time, you know? So it's kind of, once you realize that, it makes you feel less alone. It's like, oh, some other people have dealt with weird politics during their lives. Other people have dealt with strange weather during their lives. Other people have dealt with a crazy aunt that locks herself in the pantry. Like, we all have, we've all gone through these things. So it's a calming, nice way to think about life.
Yeah, reassuring. You have those commonalities for sure. Well, Tom, Papa, thank you so much. Again, this book being released in June.
Yeah, very exciting.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
During her life, Barbara Bush pioneered a literacy movement, believing that learning how to read and write was a fundamental human right. We hope these stories have inspired you to be part of that movement.
If you'd like to help bring the joy of reading and literacy to all Houstonians, we encourage you to scan the QR code on your screen or visit barbarabushhouston.org.
And even a few hours of your time or a few dollars can make a huge difference in the life of a child or adult.
We really hope you'll take a closer look at this problem in your own community, or at the very least that this program has encouraged you to pick up a good book and reconnect with the joy of reading.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next year with even more reasons to celebrate reading.